Today we're going to be looking at every single icon and discussing which one is the best version we possibly can have. Obviously there is 98 plus more to come in the game, team of the year, hopefully team of the season and alternative icons, but right now we have base, mid, World Cup and Prime. We're going to go through all 98 and figure out which one is the best version of each icon. Starting off with Campbell then. 150 for the base, 156 for the mid, and 269 for the prime. And a lot of these versions, most of them will be the prime, potentially. But there is definitely other versions that we'll talk about and go through which could be argued to be better. We've definitely seen it with the World Cup, and there is definitely some icons that have either changed position or genuinely just had not a good upgrade in terms of where they were in his career and obviously the pace. For instance, the base has got 4 more pace than the prime, but in general, the prime on this one is going to take the cake, mainly because you've got that +5 on the defending and physical, which means that you can go with a shadow on Campbell and have no problem at all. We go with a shadow on him, 88 pace, 96 defending, 90 physical, turns him into a 92 rated centre-back. That for me is an absolute winner. 89 Campbell is the first win. Rui Costa up next, 85 rated, 88 and 90. So we've had a pretty good upgrade from his 85 to his 88. Obviously a little bit of an overall in general. Then we've got a +2 to his prime. All of them coming in relatively cheap, 72k, 70k and 107. I don't think there was any increase. All of them are 4-star, 4-star. Mainly going to be a pretty standard one with this one. Rui Costa's 90 is going to be the winner. There's no increase on skill move, weak foot, just a generic upgrade from his 85 all the way up to his 90. Next, Coman, 81 for the base, 118 for the mid, and 265 for the prime. So this is an interesting one because his 85 comes in relatively low value, to be honest. 67 pace, even at the start of the game. A Kimpembe, a Varane, a Marquinhos, pretty much most centre-backs have the value. And in general, this card at the start of the game was coming in somewhere between 100,000 coins on the start of the game. That's still more expensive than any centre-back that you could go get for that price. They were better, 100%. Then we got the mid. We did get, I believe, did we get an SBC? I don't think we got an SBC. I thought we got something for Coman. That might have been the year before. That's 118. And the big thing for the mid is that he has got a CDM as an alternative position. For me, Coman is a wasted centre-back. He's got great shooting, passing, dribbling's okay, nothing too crazy. It's mainly the agility, balance, lower and everything down. And then we go back to the prime and there is no alternative position. Again, he's still got 88 shooting, 89 passing. So if you wanted to move him in game, that is not bad at all. But in general, I feel like the mid is going to take the cake on this one, mainly because of that alternative position. If you wanted to use that prime as a CDM, you have physically got to move him in game and have either somebody as a CDM move back in or having to play a 5 at the back and move him that way. There is ways around it, and I think in general, you look at the card and there's not too much of an upgrade there, but the fact that the mid has got an alternative position means for me that one will be the best version of Coman. Plus he's got an extra 2 pace. That's always going to work out well. He is a 3-star, and I believe he's the same on every single version. For me, the mid takes the one for Coman. Pires, another very, very easy one. The base is coming in as a can be left mid, which is always nice, and alternative positions have been very fortunate with him, as every version has a different alternative. The base is coming in at 73. We've got, I think the mid is coming in at 89.5, and the prime's coming in at 200. Obviously with the prime, that is still dropping to this day, and most definitely is the best version of Pires, purely hands down. There's a 16 pace increase from his base, a same pace from his mid, but obviously with his mid you lose out on a future upgrade as such. But the prime is the one. Base Rio Ferdinand, 85 rated, one of the more meta centre-backs that we've seen throughout FIFA. The base is normally the one that is heavily kind of bought by the start of the year, and this year I feel like he's definitely not been in as many teams and most definitely not even in as many videos as I could imagine. He has got the 88 with a 4 pace decrease, which is normally why the base comes in more expensive than the mid. With the prime, it's coming in at 520, 1 pace decrease, but 7 increase on the defending and a 3 on the physical. For me, the prime has got to be the way forward with him. If you're looking at I think it's anchor everybody would go for, as we just double check, you'd end up with 87 pace, 96 defending, 91 physical. It's a no-brainer, a 93 rated centre back. The prime is the one to go for. Now going on to my man Vidic, 85, 88, 90, again very similar, and this year I just don't see him at all. He genuinely is left in the dust. I was contemplating if he's even in the game at this point because we have seen nothing from him. The base is 77, the mid's 97, and the prime is 273. Again, very much like Rio, as we see, from the base with 77, loses out on the mid, which is why the base... Well, in fact, the base is less than the mid, but in general, you get that 5 increase on the defending. I suppose that is a good thing. But the prime is exceedingly better than both versions. You've got more pace, load more defending, more physical. He just naturally is the better defender in the prime. And the chem style you'd go for this one is going to be that anchor, giving you 82 pace, 97 defending, and then an increase of 95 on the physicality, taking him to a 94 rated centre back, and definitely one that I need to have a look at. I recommend using SkyCoach at skycoach.gg. Link will be in the description, and make sure on your checkout to use the code JT11 for a discount on your order. The first card with 4 different versions. Laudrup does have the World Cup card, and to be honest, every single version of him are just under 115,000 coins. The base is 70, the mid 70, the World Cup card is 67, and the prime is 115. I feel that tells you exactly what you want to know from this card. The base is actually not terrible for a starter, but the shooting is a little bit poor. So I personally would go heavily on that left wing with him. The mid, again, coming in, lost a bit of pace, kind of gets a bit more shooting, a bit more technical ability. The World Cup gets a bit more pace than obviously the mid, but again is still lost out to the base. And then finally we end up at the prime. Again, shooting wise, it doesn't get much better, to be honest, but I definitely think the prime, unfortunately for Laudrup, is going to be the best version you can get of him in a terrible scenario. So Laudrup, 115k, eat your heart out. Essien, a great card, this one. Right from the get-go, you know the base Essien's pretty decent. Has had an SBC this year, and most definitely the base is 10 times better than the mid. The mid just loses out on all aspects. But then we hit the prime, and most definitely this card gets a big increase. Goes from 250,000 coins to 704 in an absolute baller of a card. 85 pace, 90 on the defending and physical. Also having the 3-star, 4-star, good weak foot. We have okay composure. The defending and physical stats are brilliant. Good short and long passing. Genuinely, this card is a cracking version of Essien, and 100% takes the cake. Luis Hernandez, another one with 4. We have an 85, 87, 88, and 90. The prices are as followed: 80,000, 89, 168, and 235. So obviously with the first two, it's a pretty standard. We've got great pace on him. Shooting's obviously pretty decent throughout. Dribbling just gets better and better each time, which is always perfect. And he's got a bit of physicality. The big difference with this one, and where I personally think that the World Cup card could definitely show something, is the fact that he is normally a 4-star, 3-star. With some of these World Cups, we have an increase of either skill move or weak foot, and that is only to the World Cup card. So the prime doesn't actually have it. So with this Luis Hernandez, you saw the 4-star, 4-star, but the prime only has the 3. So when we look at the difference between the two cards, even though there is a 2 overall rating, you will notice that there is only 3 stats that are better in that 90 rated card. The biggest thing for me is that 4-star weak foot. That is going to make this card cheaper, which makes it even better again, and also the fact that you cannot replace a weak foot with anything else. 1 on the passing, 1 on the dribbling, 1 on the physical. For me, that's just not good enough, unfortunately. If we look at the in-games, it's ball control by 1 and dribbling by 2. I tell you now, you will not notice that difference, but the 4-star weak foot, that is a big deal, and that is why the World Cup version is the best. So a card that does have a very freakish different position, we get a Blanc that is a cam as its base. obviously more geared towards a cam. Once we go to the mid, we lose out on so much shooting, but we gain so much defending. This card is an absolute elite OG baller in terms of a centre-back. He is definitely overlooked at times by the majority, but we've seen him countless times throughout the FIFA history do wonderful things in teams. He has got a World Cup card and then obviously the Prime, and as you can tell, the World Cup card is coming in that 10k more expensive, and that is mainly down to one reason: one extra pace. There is no increase on a 2-star or 3-star, it is just a standard. You get one more defending minus a dribbling and a pace on the Prime, or you get the extra pace and dribbling and miss out on one defending. I tell you right now, there is very little between these two cards, but anything for centre-backs personally that has more pace will always do better. You just have to go with that. If obviously you go with the minus pace, you are one less. Even though, yes, it won't make too much of a difference, I feel like the pace is going to be more detrimental than obviously the defending in the very milliseconds that you're ever going to see anything. So for me, the World Cup Blanc is coming in the winner. We then move over to Litmanen, and again, unfortunately another icon that just has no relevancy. 70, 70, 85. There's very little difference between them, to be honest. All of them are pretty unusable once they come out. If we got the 90 Litmanen at the start, maybe we have a little bit more play with him, but in general, it's just a progressive upgrade. We get more pace on the Prime and obviously a good rounded of stats, but unfortunately, it doesn't make him any more usable. But the Prime is definitely the most. Ian Wright next, 78,000 on the base, 70,000 on the mid. We then have the 89 Prime, which is coming in at 100. Again, price-wise, there's very little in it, but the Prime is coming in with only -2 pace compared to the 6 on the mid. We get an increase of 4 on the shooting, 3 on the dribbling, and 3 on the physical. This one's just a standard progressive upgrade. There's nothing too spectacular. It would have been nice if we got a 4-star skiller from him, but we've got the pace at a certain level, which is always good. If you really wanted to, you could go with the Hunter on this version and get the 97 pace, 95 shooting, and it does turn him into a 90 rated overall striker anyway. Then we have Crespo, 70 for the mid, or yeah, both in fact, 70 for the mid, 70 for the base. We then have a World Cup card at 101 and 240 for the Prime. So we can pretty much just skip past the mid and the base. There's just no real compromise with them two. But we have got a +2 on the pace, +1 on the shooting, passing, dribbling, minus on the defending by 1, and +2 physical. So overall, it's an inform upgrade. But again, like we've seen before, with obviously this World Cup version, we have a 4-star, 5-star, whereas normally the card is a 4-star, 4-star. Again, minimal upgrade means we look down to the fine details of this card, and a 5-star weak foot is going to be more beneficial when all you're going to do is whack a Hunter on him anyway. If we look at them stats, we'll end up with 95 pace, 93 shooting, compared to, if for instance we did it on this card, we would have a 97 pace, 94 shooting. Minimal upgrade there, so the 4-star, well the 5-star weak foot is going to take the cake, and the World Cup is the best version. Base Zola, 85 rated, one of the better 85s that we've seen in the game by a long shot. There's great pace, good shooting, dribbling's absolutely crazy for an 85, and he's a 4-star, 4-star. Unfortunately, it goes a little bit downhill for the mid. That comes in at 112 compared to the base at 170. So we know full well that the base is definitely the second best card on this. But once we go up to that Prime, it is a loss of pace by 4, but a gain of 6 on shooting, 6 on passing, and 2 on defending. We do keep the same amount of dribbling, which is absolutely fine. I don't think there's any in-game stat moves. We get, okay, no, in fact, we get an extra... Whoa, agility balance on the base is looking crazy, in fact. That is a big upgrade for that base, most definitely. We lose out on the reactions and a bit of ball control, as well as the composure. In fact, I could be wrong to say this, but you know what? I think in terms of in-game, when you look at it, that pace increase, we then have more agility balance, more composure overall, then we have a bit more stamina. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the base version's got to be the best one. By the looks of that, if we look at the downgrade, so we go the other side, obviously with the Prime we get an increase on the reactions and the ball control. I don't think it's enough. With the base, we can 100% go with Hunter, I can imagine, and absolutely stack this up to the nines. So if we go with a Hunter, 97 pace, 90 shooting on an 85. That is next level. Like, that is incredible. But looking at that fine detail, the agility balance both being 92, as well as having the composure go up from 79 to 85. Base version all the way. Hadji is next. 77,000 for the base, 109 for the mid. We then have 198 for the World Cup and 286 for the Prime. So obviously, base and mid are going to be left in the dust really with this. We have got a nice kind of World Cup card, as well as then the nice Prime. As we see on the cards, it's a -2 for the pace for the Prime, +1 on defending, dribbling and shooting. But a nice and easy explanation. We look at the Prime, he is a 4-star, 4-star, and the mid, or the World Cup in fact, is a 4-star, 5-star. As a cam, that's going to be absolutely detrimental to the card. So for me, the weak foot is going to take the cake, and we've got the World Cup as the best version. Gattuso up next. Another nice DM in terms of his base. Soon as he comes out, I don't know how much he actually is. He's coming in at about, 24th of September. So he's coming in at 166. He then takes a steady climb up to about 180, 200. And then as we see throughout November, he just absolutely tanks. That's all of the base icon SBCs, player picks, everything we've got. We have his mid, 1 extra pace, a couple minus on the defending in fact, plus on the physical, and then the passing absolutely tanks as well. But then we hit the Prime. Doesn't have any increase from the base, so he technically loses 1 from his mid on the Prime version, but we get an extra defending, extra physical, minus on the passing again, which is quite interesting, which always leads me to believe which one should you go for in this, because every card is very similar. We look at the difference between the defending, it's like a 4 difference between 3 cards. Again, with the physicality side of stuff, it's 3 between 3 cards, and then the pace is 1 between the 3 cards. In general, I feel like all of them will give you the same aspects. I don't think there's a single skill or weak foot upgrade, so you still get a 2-star, 3-star. So on basis of that, there isn't that much of an upgrade. In terms of price, it's pretty much, well, in terms of price and obviously the better upgrade, I'm going to have to go for the base. Nice and easy one with this. We have Fernando Torres. He is an 85 to start with, 88, 91. As we see, the Prime is looking magnificent. 600,000 coins. Every version of him is nice. The 85 is a little bit underwhelming compared to some of the starters. The 88 comes in really nice. That is where he really picks up the speed. He's coming in about 227, and then the Prime's coming in at 600 with the big increase. He's obviously the 4-star, 4-star, great pace, shooting, dribbling, the whole shebang. The Prime has got to take the cake. Petite. So we start off at a left back with this card. Has the alternatives of centre back, left wing back, and CDM. It's coming in at 113. He's not a terrible left back, but most definitely you're not spending 200-300k on Petite left back. Not a chance. He then gets a CDM, my more favoured position for him. He has a World Cup as a CDM, and then he has a Prime as a CDM. And this one's quite a nice one again. No upgrades on the weak foot or obviously skill moves, so they are all a 3-star, 3-star unfortunately. But the difference between the Prime and the World Cup is about 60,000 coins for the World Cup being in the favour, a -4 on that pace, so the World Cup is coming in with 81. You lose out on 1 defending, 1 dribbling, 1 shooting. You know the famous words. World Cup is better. Suker is up next. So again, an 85, 87, 88 and 90. If we look at the difference between the cards, we have a 4-star, 4-star, which he is still the same. And in general, most cards are coming in relatively cheap. In terms of the difference between the World Cup and the Prime, which is pretty much like most of them, you're missing out on an extra 80,000 coins for the Prime. So for a double upgrade, no dynamic, I personally would say the World Cup is going to be better. You're just getting more for your buck. You may be missing out on a defensive increase and a passing, but for more pace, the same shooting, the same skill move and weak foot, and to get a cheeky dynamic, Suker's World Cup has got to be the best version. Makalele. Now this is one card personally that just goes absolute walkabouts from the very start. I very rarely ever see this card unless he is either packed or an SBC. There is no chance I see this card at all, even though we look at the Prime and it's not a bad card. It's coming in at 360. Definitely going to have to give a lot of these Primes a go at the end of the day, but in terms of the right mid, I feel like he's average at best. He's not going to do anything. The mid's coming in a little bit nicer. 78 pace, 86. He's obviously more tailored towards a CDM. Can play the right mid still, but I'm not really going to. And then the difference between that and the prime is about, what, 240,000 coins, but we get an extra 2 on the pace, 2 defending, 3 on dribbling and physical, and an extra 2 on the passing. In terms of that, it's got to be the prime on this version. Seedorf is up next, and a beautiful card. Every version is absolutely spectacular with this one. He has a great version each time. He obviously comes in a little bit more expensive on the mid. We'll have a look at that in a second. Still a 4-star, and I'm pretty sure he follows that theme the whole way up, to be honest. We look at the 88, it's coming in at 260 or 266. The prime's coming in at 216, and really, I don't know why. I don't know if there's a certain thing, but if I'm looking at this card, I'm thinking they're both so similar. How is one 50k more? And the fact that it's the mid that has been out longer, I'm unsure. I am genuinely unsure with this. If we go down here a little bit and have a look at the differences. So we're losing out on agility for the prime. In fact, that's going to be better. So the pace is down by 2. That's fine. We can get a hunter. We can do whatever. Losing 2 shot power compared to what the mid's already got. We're gaining extra on the passing. Physicality wise, we're losing 8 stamina. Is that worth a 40k drop? Probably not. We're missing standing tackles, defensive tackles. What's the 70? So it doesn't really make too much of a difference. And we get better dribbling throughout. Free agility is not going to change that card incredibly. I personally would say that the prime is the better version. And the fact that we've got him coming in at 50,000 coins cheaper, I'm going to have to go with the prime. Even though the mid is very close in a lot of rating, the fact that you're actually paying 50k for, personally, a slightly better card, but it's very minimal, the prime's going to be the one. Pretty standard one with Ashley Cole. The base is actually the second best card on this. Mid's losing a lot of pace, which is just not good. Does gain a bit more physical and defending, but the prime's coming in at 370. A lot more extra on the physical side of stuff. It gets a +9. 5 more defending and only loses 2 pace. A Shadow and Anchor will absolutely sort that out 100%, and he's going to be the best version of Ashley Cole. Wayne Rooney, 142 for his 86 base, 350 for his mid, and we get 597 for his prime. Obviously, you've always got to take into consideration the prime's going to be very hard to get. We haven't had the SBC yet where we can just get a load of primes, so we are still waiting for that to come to fruition. In terms of the mid, it's actually a solid card when we look at it. All versions are a 3-star, 4-star, but in terms of the difference between the prime and the mid, if we click on the prime and have a look at the mid version actually, so we can see the minuses. So obviously we get 1 extra pace from the mid, we lose out on 2 shooting, we gain an extra agility balance but lose 2 composure, we lose a bit of physicality as well as passing. I think it's very minimal, and I would say in terms of efficiency for price, the mid's definitely the way to go for right now, but more than likely the prime will drop, and that one is the best card overall. Steven Gerrard, 86 on the CDM, 89 CM, and obviously the prime at 91. The difference between the price is 84,000, 150, and 300,000. If we take a quick look at the prime, we do have an SBC that is still available until April for 460. Obviously a little bit more expensive to accommodate either the market at the time and then also untradeable stuff, so you can use little coins if you did want this card. And the difference between the base, well the mid in fact, and obviously the prime is going to be as followed. We obviously get more pace for the mid, which is a standard with most. We lose out on 4 shooting, 1 dribbling, 2 defending, 2 passing, and 4 physical. It's the composure that really kills it for me. The 3- on the composure at such a low rate anyway is going to be the kicker. I think for me, you can always add a chem style, you can never add composure. So the prime, 300,000 coins and an SBC is the one. A pretty standard one with Van Nistelrooy, 74, 79 and 180. It's a pretty standard even from the base. We got a lot more pace on him, and unfortunately it's still not quite up there with the likes of them. But you go and whack a hunter on him, for instance, we're looking at 94 pace, 94 shooting. It's a very nice card, and you are having to waste a lot of finishing just purely for the fact that you need the pace on him. I think Chemstar will definitely have a different opinion and is going for more of a Hawk vibe, which again I could probably see. 96 shooting, you kind of round it out a bit more, have a little bit more strength, but the prime is the one to go for. Gotta be the easiest one to do so far. Hullet. 450 for the base, 2.6 for the mid, 3.8 for the prime. I don't need to say much more. I don't need to dive into it. Every version from mid to bare prime is endgame, but the prime is always going to be on top in this debate. Roy Keane, 76 for the base, 78 for the mid, and 145 for the prime. In terms of the upgrades, still unfortunately a 2-star, 3-star, and maybe this could be one that we could get an upgrade to maybe a 3-star, 5-star, or a 4-star, 5-star. That would be incredible for Keane, just making up numbers now. But in general, from the difference between the prime and the mid, you get an extra pace on the mid, obviously, as well as a shooting, but you do lose out on the dribbling, the defending, and a bit of physical. Again, the composure's pretty high on Keane, so it's not that much of a loss, but 6 dribbling, you lose 2 reactions. I think with these sort of stats, I can go and get myself some more pace. I can go and get a little bit more shooting if I need to. And I think in terms of the prime, you're looking at an engine anyway, just to boost up that agility balance. Obviously with his mid as well, there is no increase, just a decrease on balance. So even if you had minus 2 on the defending, if they had the dribbling, I'd then be saying that that version would be better. I'm trying to find engine here, but I think that is going to be the best version of Keane. Roberto Carlos, very expensive still for the base, 400,000 coins. We drop a little bit to obviously the pace, but 538. We then have 846 for the World Cup and only 920, so not a big jump from his World Cup to his prime in terms of price, and there's only a 1 rating in it. Again, very similar. Most versions are pretty much identical, bar from maybe a little bit of defending and physical, but the World Cup version has a 3-star, 3-star compared to his normal 3-star, 2-star. Again, with the weak foot, that's going to be a massive, massive boost. We all know what it's like from a 4-star to a 5-star, but having a 2-star weak foot compared to 3, even though in a left back, I reckon you can get away with it that little bit more. The fact he's cheaper and the rating increase from his World Cup to his prime is 1s on the board, losing out on 1 passing. I just don't think in an extra 90 to 80,000 coins, the 3-star weak foot is going to clinch it for the World Cup version. Raul, a great progression card, 86 centre forward at 70. Pretty much both of them at 70, and then we get the prime at 360. It's a nice increase from the base, a good upgrade from the mid. He's a pretty standard. Prime is always going to be the winner with Raul. Pretty much with most goalkeepers, to be honest. Again, there's a progression level. I wouldn't say that one is massively better than the other, but I would say the highest rated always seems to work with goalkeepers. And to be honest, you could argue the 90, you could argue the 91. It would be down to literally personal preference. There is not one thing that he will do massively different. So the prime in pretty much most of the goalkeepers has got to be the way. And as we say that, Schmeichel, again, very similar. 86 is going to have no hope. 90 could definitely work still, and the prime coming in at nearly 400,000 coins will take the cake with this one. The higher the rated, unless you lose like minus 20 on the speed, they're still going to be absolutely incredible compared to the other versions. An interested upgrade next, Nedved. We did have an SBC a while back now for his base. We then have a mid coming in at 134, and then also the prime that is coming in at 290. Again, a good progression between them, but the base does have that big pace increase, but unfortunately has too much of a shooting and passing decrease, as well as a bit of dribbling. If we're looking between the mid, as I feel like the prime just doesn't hold the torch to him, you've obviously got more pace, which is always nice. You've lost out on 8 defending. Again, I can kind of rip that one off. You lose 2 on the dribbling, 2 on the shooting, as well as the passing. I think an extra 3 pace. I can go and whack a Hunter. I can go whack a Catalyst. If we was talking maybe around about the 94 pace mark, then obviously the mid would definitely come up trumps, because we can then use a chem style that is more based around shooting and dribbling compared to having to use that Hunter if we needed it. So I'm going to say the prime, but most definitely we're just slight off the mid being the best version there. 86 Vieira. So there's 2 ways to look at this. The 90 is technically not in transfer market, so unless you did him, you cannot get him now unless they re-release it at any point, but the 91 would have to be number 1 then. If you did the SBC purely on free ability, just using the tokens to go get him, the fact that you don't get much of an upgrade, it's just 1s and 2s, it's got to be the World Cup, because the fact he is free. You don't get that anywhere else. It is time spent on the game, and you get an end game centre mid from it. World Cup Vieira, is my number one. A natural progression for Kluivert again, 86 to the 88, both coming in at 70,000. We have the mid at a 91 at 130. Obviously, from the difference in terms of pace, we lose out on one pace, 5 shooting extra, as well as passing and dribbling. The prime's just a natural one to go for this one. There is no change in skill move, I don't believe. He's normally a 4-star, so it's going to be the prime. Owen actually gets so much better at the later stage. Mid's actually coming in very similar, but we do get the shooting increase. As you can see, 81 to 74,000, and then 200 for obviously the prime. Obviously, he's got the pace increase, which is great from the base. Mid-wise, it's, again, very, very close. We lose out on the shooting mainly, bit of passing, bit of physicality, and I think he needs to scrape every little bit he can get. In terms of weak foot and skill move, that stays the same at a 3-star, 4-star, and the prime will come in as the victor. Ballack is an easy one next. We've just finished his 91 review. Go check that on the channel at the end. But Ballack's quite a nice one as well. Gets the natural progression. 91 coming in with more pace. Obviously an all-round overall better feeling. As you can see between the two on the mid, we get actually more pace on the prime. And obviously the price is coming in a little bit higher. But I think the prime has got to be number one in this version. Veron next. 86 for the base. 88. 90. In terms of the progression of price, we're looking at 74, 80 and 170. Obviously, in terms of upgrades, bit more pace, bit more shooting, as well as physicality. It's just an all-round nice upgrade from the base. And I would say from the mid to the base, again, we're getting a nice inform upgrade. Just the natural progression of how an icon should technically go if you are looking at their prime physical kind of condition in their career. Again, another one, John Barnes, 86, 87, 89. The prime's going to come in way on top here. Absolutely trounces every version. Obviously, with the cam, we get a bit more defending for some reason, but most definitely the prime is number one. Pace, shooting, passing, physical, dribbling, all looking very nice compared to obviously that base. And I think the price kind of speaks it. Same with Larson, very similar to these lower sort of icons that we see at kind of like a 200k, maybe 150 price on the prime already. Naturally, 86 is okay, nothing spectacular. 85, again, very basic. 90's coming in with a little bit of talent. Yes, he's still not going to be the most amazing striker, but at least he's got something. So I think in terms of this card, the prime has got to be taken at home. Zambrotta, 366 for the base. 260 for the mid. I think that's pretty standard. The base is always fantastic for Zambrotta. Really comes in nicely. We then got a World Cup right back as well as a prime right back. Both again about 130 between the two of them. There is no upgrade as all versions are a 4-star, 5-star anyway. But in terms of price for this one, I feel like the World Cup's most definitely got to take the cake with it. A +1s and +2 for an extra 140. The best card has got to be the World Cup for you, and in general will be the better card that you can get in your team. Right card up next, and again a few different versions from him that look relatively nice. We have the CDM as the 86, the 88 centre back that also can be also a CDM, and then finally the 90. Obviously with the 88 he did have an SBC that has obviously expired, and in terms of the difference between the mid and the prime, very similar like a lot of them. It is a natural progression for him. He is a 3-star, 4-star I believe in every single version, so he is no upgrade in terms of that, and in general you're going to get the CDM side of him, and that is going to be the best position, but at least every single version can be a CDM or centre-back if you really wanted to, but CDM would be the definite position I would go for. And with Rijkaard, the prime's got to be the way. Frank Lampard, 86 rated on his base. He then has an 88 centre mid and a 90 prime. In terms of the difference between the base and the mid, we got a massive pace downgrade from the base to the mid, which makes the base the second best version of this card, but the prime has got to take the cake with this one, coming in at 195, just losing out on one pace compared to the base. Obviously getting a more shooting, more passing, dribbling, defending and physical. He is naturally the better player as he gets into his prime, but the base is definitely a close second. A not so used icon in the game is Herrero centre back. He has 86, 89 and obviously a 91. Normally when we get the prime moments he's a little bit better and has the position sometimes to be a centre defensive mid. The centre back is going to be the best version in the prime this time round, as to be honest it is again a natural progression of his pace. Going up a little bit, he does lose 2 compared to the base, which is normal, but the 6 on the defending and 5 on the physical is going to make the prime that little bit better for you. Trezeguet as a striker, 86, 89 and 91. Would have been nice to see the moments version, or at least another version of this card very soon, but again, pretty much most of them are not as usable as you'd kind of imagine, hence why the prime is coming in at 124 and the 2 base and mids are coming in at 70, but the prime will take the lead on the best version. We go into Vieri, again another one that is pretty simple. Prime has got the bigger increase on the shooting, passing, dribbling and physical. The pace-wise of stuff is only losing 1 out compared to his base, and obviously 2 to his mid. So in general, the prime, even though, as you can imagine, being 84,500 coins, is going to be the best version of a bad bunch. We all up next. He starts his career as a right back. He then goes swiftly into a centre back role, and obviously with the right back, he can be a centre back as well, which is not a bad little position for him, as I feel like in terms of right backs, you definitely need someone who's that little bit quicker, but because you could have got this right back at the start of the game, you could have actually had a solid centre back from him. Add a bit of shadow onto him, he gets the pace and he gets the job done. As he progresses through, he has a 72 pace, 75 and 70, which, as you can imagine, the difference between the World Cup and obviously his prime, I believe in SBC standards, this card would have been the best one at the price at 180. The prime's coming in at 224, and the only difference between them is 5 better pace on the World Cup version. He loses out on 1 defending and gains 1 physical. I think the World Cup has got to take this one. Shevchenko is another card with a World Cup version, and again, with him comes a big upgrade. The base and mid, pretty standard, both of them now coming in at 70,000 coins. The World Cup is actually coming in at 90,000, and obviously the prime at 220. The big thing again with this card is he gets an upgrade on his skill move, taking him to a 4-star rather than a 3-4. In terms of the upgrade between the World Cup and obviously the prime, you are getting 2 more pace, which is not too bad, an extra shooting, minus on the defending and 1 on the dribbling. In terms of the difference, I don't believe that's big enough to kind of weigh an upgrade on the skill moves, so for me, the World Cup is coming in with this one. Like I say with a lot of keepers, predominantly the best version is going to be the prime on pretty much all of them. There's one keeper that I think is as good as, and we'll get to him very soon, but in terms of Casillas, a natural progression as we see him go through the mid, the World Cup, and all the way to the prime, which is coming in at 450, a very tall price to pay for a keeper, but definitely the best stats and your best option for Casillas. A new icon in the game, Xabi Alonso, goes from his 87 centre defensive mid to an 89 and then finishes on a 90. The difference between the prices is 74, obviously the bog standard one. The mid is coming in at 95 and 170 for the prime. And again, the difference between the two, obviously with the mid, he's going to have a little bit more pace, not enough to really cancel out a lot, but I think in general, both of them very, very similar. In terms of efficiency, I'd say the mid. In terms of better pricing, in terms of better rating, I would obviously go with his prime. Thierry Henry. If we manage to get a Team of the Year version of this card, then he will be phenomenal. I think this year it is such a shame that we don't have moments and no guarantee that he gets an extra version, because this is the year that Henry actually feels incredible. Obviously, the big thing with Henry has always been that balance. Every single version is just not enough. An engine is needed 100% of the time, so it would have been nice to see a Team of the Year that maybe sorts that out, but I think this year especially, it is not as prominent in Thierry Henry. I feel like he definitely surpasses that compared to most years, but as we go through, he's got 2 left wing versions as his base and mid, and then his prime that is absolutely outstanding, hence why that card is coming in at 1.2 million coins. Robin van Persie then, 139 on the base, very nice card looking straight from the get-go. We then go to the mid, little bit lost on the pace, definitely the base version would be my preferred choice. We then have a World Cup version which was an SBC with no upgrades on skill move or weak foot, and then we go into the prime with more like an inform upgrade, as we can imagine, that is coming in at 300,000 coins and is the best version of RVP. Socrates or Socrates, however you want to pronounce it, obviously Very good card. Brazilian always wins in any sort of debate when it comes to icons, and the prime of him is definitely going to be the best version. 87 coming in at what, 96,000. The mid is coming in at 130, and then obviously the prime is nearly tripling that into a 380 price tag with a solid amount of stats. Another beautiful icon in Eto. Base is still coming in at a very high price of nearly half a mil, mid 600. The World Cup card at 1.5 and the prime coming in at 1.4. I feel like that tells you all you need to know, and the main difference is always going to be that 4-star, 5-star weak foot. In terms of the upgrade from the prime to the World Cup, 2 extra pace, 1 shooting, a physical and a dribbling. For me, if we look at the in-games between them, obviously the prime has had 1 on everything for dribbling. Pace-wise, it's gone up to 95 apiece and a little bit on the shooting. For me, that is not going to outweigh a 5-star weak foot, and definitely, as you can imagine, with the price difference, the World Cup takes this one. Rivaldo is up next at 120 for his base, 215 for his mid, and 414 for the prime. Unfortunately, there isn't actually a weak foot upgrade on this card, which is what he has been screaming for. A 4-star, 2-star any icon is just going to be out of touch, unfortunately. But that being said, the mid, the prime, the mid and the base are nice cards, but they don't outweigh the prime stats. Kaka, again, another one that is absolutely astonishing in the game. Looks like he's kind of on a little bit of a downgrade in terms of pace on the mid, obviously coming in relatively the same sort of price, but the prime blows everything away with a 700,000 price tag and a beautiful upgrade from his base and his mid. He has a magnificent glow up and is a 5-star, 4-star in this game that is worth trying out. With Lahm, he is obviously one of the newer icons from the previous years. Again, goes in a few different positions, has the right back, left wing back, and CDM. He takes a little bit of a downgrade on pace into the CDM, which is fair enough, but that would have been probably the better version of the card in terms of positioning, because Lahm is brilliant in that CDM. So previous years, if I was looking at the difference between obviously a CDM and a right back, I would 100% pick the CDM in this. With the fact that the right back can have an alternative position of the CDM, the prime has now taken the top spot, as moments last year let him be CDM as a 92. This year, the prime is taken. Paul Scholes, another one unfortunately lost and forgotten about, unfortunately. It's coming in at a very, very cheap price. Both mid and base coming in about 80. Prime coming in at 172. And like a few of the lower tier icons, unfortunately, the prime is the best one out of a little bit of a bad bunch. Closer, one of the World Cup's absolute legends of the game. Unfortunately on FIFA, it doesn't really feel that way. Both base and mid coming in at the very minimum price. We have the World Cup at 87 and the prime at 170. Again, like a World Cup, he has a little bit of an Easter egg in him. With this one, you get a 4-star, 4-star, which helps tremendously with Closer. The fact that the World Cup's definitely got a little bit more on the pace side of stuff compared to the base, and a bit more on the shooting. Obviously, in terms of the difference between the World Cup and the prime, you only get a 2 bonus on the pace, 1 passing, 1 physical. No shooting, but the big thing is that 4-star skill moves. Unfortunately for the prime, the World Cup has taken it, especially because he's coming in at 90,000 as well. Desai, a beautiful centre-back of the game, and also with the alternative for a CDM. Very much like a lot of them, as we saw with Lahm. As a centre-back, I think he's absolutely solid still. But the thing for me is, I have got better centre-backs that I could put there, and I could have a much better use out of him as a CDM. His mid is the CDM card. Normally his moments was as well, but again, with the big upgrade from the fact that we can put the centre-back in a CDM, I'm going to have to pick the prime for this one. Otherwise, I would have been very likely to have gone with the CDM version, as I do think that is a better position for the card. So the prime is number 1, mainly because of that alternative position. King Kenny, 230 on the base, 313 on the mid. We then have a World Cup at 460 and a prime at 650. Alternative position, striker, centre forward, right wing. Some very decent cards there that we can go, and especially with them alternative positions. Unfortunately, the prime can't, so you'd only have centre forward or striker. But in general, that is going to be the best card. The World Cup has a basic informed downgrade if you were going down to him, and there is no difference for his 4-star, 5-star. Riquelme is another one that, again, natural progression is pretty cheap, whatever version you get. 140 on the prime. He's not really going to give you anything more than just a standard icon upgrade, and the prime's going to be number 1. But again, like a few of them, it's just not worth it. Zanetti is another interesting one. Personally, I've never really liked him at left back, right back. With the alternative on the base, you can go right back, left back, or left mid. With obviously the mid card, you can do the same, but rather than left mid, you can go into a centre mid. And like we've seen with a lot of Zanetti's, he's always had a moment CDM version that most definitely is everybody's fan favourite. I just don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a certain thing with his body type. I've just never really liked him as a as a fullback defender, as a right back, left back. I've always preferred him in the central part of the game, and now we've got the centre mid version of him. That for me is going to be the better position for him, and the prime will take the cake. We have Ian Rush next. Again, very, very simple. It is just a straight progression to his prime. He has obviously got pretty much a free pace difference between all three cards. The shooting is the best thing that you're going to get from the prime compared to obviously the base and the mid, and he's coming in at 120, so realistically it's not that much of an upgrade, but the prime would be the best. Hugo Sanchez getting a nice upgrade. He's pretty standard on a nice card to start with. A 3-star, 4-star would have been really nice with a World Cup or something to get that skill move up to a 4-4, and I think we could have a really good upgrade there. With the base to the mid, there is very little between the two. 2 pace, 3 dribbling, no shooting difference between them, but then when we go to the prime, we get an extra boost on the pace, which is always fantastic. Extra shooting, extra dribbling, and a bit more on that physicality, but unfortunately we don't get that skill move upgrade, so it's just a natural one for him, and the prime is number 1. Stoichkov, another brilliant icon that I believe is just left unturned, to be honest. We did have, or a few years ago, we had an SBC from him for his mid, I want to say, and you could have got that one. I believe I packed one out of an icon SBC and was very, very surprised with how good he actually was in game. His natural stats on his base are really solid. We then look in the mid at 313. Obviously, the World Cup came in as an SBC at 710, and then we have got the prime at 680. Like a lot of these World Cups, it comes with an upgrade of a weak foot, I believe, or is it a skill move? A weak foot. So he's now a 4-star, 4-star with great stats on him. And obviously, in terms of the prime, it's just a standard upgrade. Nothing too crazy between the two. So for me, the World Cup will take it with that extra weak foot. Gary Lineker. Looks like he should be a solid card. Unfortunately, does have a little bit of stockiness in his game. He's not quite the level that I'd actually want him to be. He does have a World Cup version which has no upgrade on the skill move or weak foot. Would have been a perfect one to get a 4-star weak foot, skill move there. And in general, from the World Cup to the prime, it is just a standard inform. So it is very close between which one is better of the World Cup and obviously the prime. But the fact you get 2 more composure that cannot be replicated, losing out on 1 pace is not going to be enough for the World Cup to claim this one. It is going to be the big boy prime for him, and he's coming in at 195. Cannavaro, always one of my favorites. The base is absolutely stunning from the start and most definitely better than the mid, but as we go forward to the progression, it is just a natural kind of upgrade. He did get a World Cup version, obviously, because of his World Cup win, captaining Italy to the, I think, Forza Italy. I don't know what year that was, actually. I don't know if that was 2000 and something. Could be wrong, it might have been 19, but in general, he's won the World Cup, hence why the World Cup card. But the prime is coming in with a 5 increase on the defending and physical. Pace has gone up to the 80, which is more than perfect, and will take the cake as the best version. Hands down, Butra is a beautiful striker that you can get at 215. The mid, again, a nice upgraded card, 90s on the stats, which is always perfect. We then get a World Cup with even bigger upgrades, and the prime coming in very, very nice as well, with a high price that you can go with. In terms of the difference between the World Cup, a standard inform as we can imagine, a big price difference of 115,000 coins, with a big thing with Butra, a 4-star, 5-star, rather than a 4-star, 4-star, or 3-star, 5-star in fact. So in general, the World Cup has to be number 1. And as we get to the other keeper, we have Van der Sar here, an 87, 89 and 91. Again, like Casillas, the progression is very nice, but this is the keeper that I was on about. The base, the mid and the prime are very, very similar in their aspects, because we know full well that even though technically the prime is better in terms of stats, the mid is actually fantastic in game. As we see the difference, the 7 speed, 6 positioning increase, we've got reflex down, handling up on the prime. I think personally I would much rather have the 47 speed as a Very, very theory-based sort of stat there. I would personally go with the mid on this one. I feel like in-game, the mid is always used compared to the prime. Drogba, a beautiful striker. If we had the lengthy meta still on this game, this card would have been way, way more money to cost to get him. We've obviously got the difference between the base and the mid. We do have a World Cup version coming in at a high price, and the prime is coming in at 650 max, so he is actually the same price as the World Cup pretty much. He has just not had a price increase on that one. But with obviously the World Cup comes another upgrade. So he's normally a 4-star 4-star, but this one he is a 4-star 5-star with only the inform upgrade giving you not too much in terms of everything else. We actually technically lose one composure. For me, the World Cup has got to be the one that you go for, and technically the only one you can go for at the moment. Into Dennis Bergkamp next then. 80k on the base, 126 on the mid, and 270 on the prime. Again, as we can see from the stats, it is a standard one with him. Doesn't necessarily get played too much, but in general, this prime will take the number 1 spot. David Beckham, as we see with him, centre mid on the base. We then get 2 right mid cards, and normally with the prime moments, we tend to normally get another right mid as well. The prime actually coming in really nice, and again this year, with the fact that he can be a centre mid as an alternative position, makes this card that little bit better. Obviously, I do personally prefer this card as more of a cam if I can. In general, he's not necessarily known for immense dribbling, but in terms of a right mid, sometimes I just don't feel like he's quick enough compared to what we get pretty much at the get-go. Even from then, the first month, 2 months, we get an influx of wingers, special cards, and unfortunately that normally takes Beckham's position, especially when we don't get the prime until December, January time. I feel like it's just a little bit late for this card to be a right mid, but definitely bringing him into the centre adds a new dynamic for him. You could have obviously moved him in-game, but now we have the alternative position to do it anyway. It is always nice to be able to have that right wing already in the spot and David Beckham in the centre. But the prime is number 1. Carlos Alberto, a beautiful centre-back that obviously turns right back in the other 2 versions, and very much like most of them, the prime is coming in at number 1, but even better to the fact that he is a right back. In this version, he can be a centre-back as well if you want. This leads to a nice little position change and also the ability to put Carfu in, who can only be the right back in this game. So for me, it's a big dub that we can whack Carlos Alberto in centre-back, and the prime for that reason will 100% take the cake. Bobby Moore. Very, very much never used, but there's one card on this game that they did so well. We've got the mid and the base. We then have the prime. The pace is atrocious. But then we go to this beautiful version right here. This is an outstanding centre-back. The agility on him is fantastic. The balance is brilliant. He's had a 10 increase on the version, 14 increase compared to the lowest pace Bobby Moore has, and in general is an absolute monster in game. When I used him on the review, check it out on the channel after this, obviously, then obviously I was like, this card just can't be good. I've seen him in champs, I've seen him in rivals, and I'm like, I know Bobby Moore to be absolutely useless in this game, and yet Mbappe was getting marked. You've got Neymar being marked, Ronaldo, Messi, and I'm like, there's no way that this card is fantastic until we actually looked at the card and realised it's had a little bit of a nice increase. This card is fantastic, and for 180k is well worth a little investment try. Schweinsteiger is next with a left mid base, obviously a few alternative positions there. We then jump straight into the centre mids with the mid, the World Cup, and obviously the prime. In terms of the World Cup, no upgrades needed, unfortunately. He was an SBC and the dynamic is cold as you like. But unfortunately the prime is coming in with just a simple inform upgrade, and the fact that there's no increase on his 3-star unfortunately means Schweinsteiger's prime is going to be number 1, and there's no 4-star 4-star for this German. Del P is up next, and very much like Zola, the base, especially at the start of the game, is at phenomenal value. We've got the 88 pace, 88 shooting, as well as nearly 90 dribbling, 84 passing. We take obviously a pace decrease, but a shooting increase and dribbling increase for the mid, and then we get a 5 decrease of the pace, 4 shooting, which is always nice, a good amount of passing and dribbling. But for me, I think the base is coming in at number 1. If you think about a 5 pace decrease, that is pretty much a whole full Hunter decrease. If we look at the difference between whacking a Hunter on him, 96 and 93, if then we look at the Prime, you are looking at an upgrade of 91 and 96. For me, even with the stats around him, I feel like the base is coming in better in-game and definitely cheaper at the same time. But I do think that upgrade of a 96-93 is going to be better because you are maxing out as much as possible. The only thing he does lose out a little bit on is that dribbling. But the base for me is going to be number one. Alan Shearer up next, and again, very much like most, one of the lower rated icons in terms of price. 125 for obviously the Prime, and about 70 to 80 for the base and mid. It's a standard upgrade. He's got a bit more pace on this one. The mid obviously comes in with a little bit more pace, but less shooting, and I think the Prime unfortunately takes it out of the bad bunch. Cafu up next, the other right back from the Brazil icon status that we've got. Carlos Alberto and him always fighting out for right back last year, whereas this year we can obviously put Carlos Alberto as a centre back. Unfortunately for Cafu, he stays as a right back, and I don't think there's any other position we can go for in terms of alternatives. There was a free version of this card which in terms of efficiency would definitely be number one. Again, love the World Cup in the dynamics. I think they did really well this year with that, and most definitely with this version, even though he was free, he's definitely the best version as well. We actually get the 4-star rather than a 4-star 3-star on him, and he was free as well. There isn't that much of an upgrade on obviously the Prime for me to say the weak foot being upgraded would be less beneficial than an extra pace and 2 defending. So the World Cup, even though you can't get it anymore, is number one. A new icon in the game, Jairzinho. I want to say it's either Jairzinho or Jairzinho. Let me know down below if I'm saying that right or wrong. I feel like I butcher it every time, but again, a very interesting one compared to Garincha, who's going to be on this list very shortly. But in general with him, he has a nice progressive upgrade as we see forward. Obviously with the bases coming in at 900, the mid has currently got an SBC for the next 12 days if you wanted to finish that, and then we do have the Prime that we still need to give a go at 2 million coins. It's a natural progression for him, but most definitely comes in with a very good version across the board and has made a good kind of impression from the start of his first FIFA. Xavi, 88, 90, 93. Again, very easy to kind of assume this one. From the base to the Prime, we have the same pace, but in terms of every other stat, there's actually quite a big difference between the base and obviously the Prime. Even in terms of the mid. The mid and the Prime is actually further away than the base and the Prime, which is hilarious. So for me, it would go Prime, base, mid, but the Prime is number one for him. I don't even have to look at this card. The base is absolutely fantastic. We do have an SBC. The mid is, again, still very endgame in this game, but the Prime Maldini is the absolute Ferrari of the centre-back world and is 100% one of the best centre-backs you can get in this game to this day. Figo up next with his cam base, and then he just flies out in that right wing for every other version. Does have a World Cup as a standard and is now a 5-star 4-star on this version compared to a 4-star 4-star. We look at the difference, again, inform warranted, and to be honest, the World Cups have definitely taken the storm with them upgrades. I think the 5-star 4-star is too beautiful to take out the difference, and to be honest, the Prime is coming in at 3k cheaper, so the World Cup is my number one. Matthias, don't really have to look too much. Unfortunately, he didn't have the upgrade of a skill move with his World Cup version, so it's straight to the Prime with this one. Coming in extinct 2 million coins. Still got the 3-star, 4-star, unfortunately, but the stats are just insane with this one. At least top 5 midfielders in the game to this day, and especially in terms of icon. As we see with a lot of wingers, predominantly they do naturally follow the normal progression of base being solid, mid being anywhere between kind of a little bit lower than the base or a little bit higher, and the Prime blowing everybody out the water. We've got a big price decrease, well, big price increase in fact, from the base to the Prime. Obviously then the mid coming in at a little bit about 500, but the Prime is amazing with this Georgie Best. Honestly, with some centre-backs, I don't even realise they're in the game still. Baresi could have done with that Bobby Moore upgrade in a World Cup. Unfortunately, it is just a standard with him. He has got obviously a good amount of pace still compared to his base with the Prime, as obviously only losing -1. But with the extra increase of the defending, I feel like you definitely have a nice card with this Prime. Unfortunately, he's not going to cater up to the likes of a gold Virgil with half the price. We have the King up next with Cantona's 88, then goes into a 90 mid and a 93 prime. Obviously that one's coming in at a very, very high price, as we can imagine. To be honest, the base definitely really levels up, and the mid is a little bit better, but I feel like the base can be argued to be the second best Cantona, but unfortunately the prime will take all of it with the nice upgrade, the big price, and obviously the stats to show for it. Pirlo, like Xavi, follows the same suit of going a little bit over. I feel like the mid's definitely a better version than what Xavi's is compared to the base, but then the prime adds that little bit of extra flair. Unfortunately still not very usable in FIFA, just in anywhere to be honest, but he's still comes in as the best Pirlo you can currently get. Nesta, very much like Baresi, it's a standard card. There's a bit of an increase, but unfortunately it's not going to be that playable in the game. Solid defensive on the base. Pace is the only thing really that matters too much, and obviously the agility balance is absolutely shot with him, so we could do with a big increase on maybe an 80 to 85 pace extra version of Nesta, a Moments or something, to make it a little bit more FIFA based. Muller as the new icon from this game. His base is coming in very, very nicely. I feel like it got a great reception at the start. Mid losing out on a bit of the pace. I would have said the base is a better version that you can get than the mid, but then we got the prime and most definitely got back to that top spot at 755. A bit of an increase from obviously the base. It's got an extra 4 on the shooting, 5 on the passing, 3 on dribbling and defending, and 1 physical. The only thing he has is an extra pace, which I think 1 pace we could normally settle, and the prime is number 1. I swear this card best get a team of the year icon. Honestly, I would love a 95, a 96, throw it up to 98. A 98 Ronaldinho would be the card I would search for every single day. It's a good progression throughout him. Every version of this card is absolutely sensational, and the prime is just beautiful in this game. It's coming in at nearly 4 million coins, and obviously one of the best left wings you can get to this day. Baggio, another one with a World Cup card, has an 89, 91, 92 and 93. Very high rated cards, most definitely. The World Cup coming in at 200,000. No increase on obviously the skill move or weak foot. In terms of the difference between the prime and the World Cup, the main thing is just a standard inform. He loses out on 1 pace, but judging from a very minimal upgrade, getting the 1 composure is normally what really takes the cake for me, just purely for the fact you cannot upgrade that in any way. Obviously the prime is going to inch it just by a couple of stats at the very minimum. Marco van Basten. So we've got this card, and again, very nice in terms of stats. You've got some pretty high shooting, but unfortunately being 6'2" with very little balance, kind of a bit more Henry, which is crazy, but in general it's going to be just one of them cards that the prime takes it, even though I don't feel like he's necessarily represented in FIFA very well. In terms of what you get from him, the prime's going to be in that number 1. Yashin's versions are pretty expensive throughout. We've obviously got 228, we've then go up to 340 and then up to 755, and obviously you've got to choose the guy with the hat. It's got to be one of the first cards we've seen with a hat on in the game, except for obviously Pyatt at the moment, who is beautiful with that Santa hat on and just a naturally very good card. But Yashin's number 1 will come in as the 94 rated goalkeeper. It's time to get into some of these big boys then. Cruyff is the first one, and I can tell you right now, no matter what version you get, everyone is beautiful. Every single Cruyff is sensational. We have obviously the 89 base. We then go up to a 91 mid. We then have the 92 centre forward, which I think all of them are 5-star anyway. And then we get to the prime, the absolute chef's kiss of icons. He is just naturally so good in this game, and if you've ever used any version of him, you completely understand. The prime is number 1 and is definitely worthy of one of the better icons you can get in FIFA 23, or in the FIFA franchise, to be honest. Puskás is up next. Again, another heavy hitter, a little bit less than Cruyff. I feel like Cruyff's 5-star is really going to blow everybody out of the water here. Unfortunately for Puskás, he does have a 4-star, 3-star, still with very, very top end stats. He just misses out on that 4-4, which would have been just so much better. If we did manage to get an alternative icon or something with him, then obviously that would be the number 1 spot for what I would want with him. The prime obviously coming in at the top, 1.6, and well worth your money. Eusebio next, 1.8 for the base, and you can tell we're in the top category of icons at the moment when you've got a base coming in at nearly 2 million coins in January. That is just nuts. Mid coming in a little bit less. It's always known that the base is better than the mid. We then also got a World Cup card, which is 2.2, and then we've got his Prime, which is 2.6. In terms of the difference between the World Cup and obviously the Prime, we have no increase on the 4-star, 5-star I believe he's got, and in terms of what we're losing out on, 1 pace, a bit of shooting, a little bit of physicality, and 1 composure, leading the Prime to king on top. Garrincha up next, 438 for obviously his base, then goes into nearly 600 for the mid, has a World Cup card at 840 and a Prime at just shy of 1,000,000 coins. Again, natural progression for a right wing like most of them, but the World Cup card again doesn't have an upgrade. He's still a 5-star, 4-star, which is very good. And to be honest, when you look at the difference of an 840 card and about what, 160k more, 1 passing, 1 dribbling. Unfortunately, that will take everything over. You can't unfortunately say that that card can be better or worse because there's no weak foot or skill move upgrade, no trait difference, no nothing. Technically, even it is by an absolute scrape, we have had 6 different stats from one card to the other. And that's where a little bit of a doubt on the World Cups does happen as well. When we have a card like this, it is literally 1 rating higher and 6 stats different. Unfortunately, technically, that Prime Garrincha is going to be the best. Another cracking centre mid and my favourite cam in the game. Zidane base at 1,000,000, 1.3 for the base, 1.95 for the World Cup and 2.5 for the Prime. Unfortunately for the World Cup version, there is nothing to upgrade with Zidane either because obviously he is normally a 5-star, 5-star. So there's not actually a great deal. It is a little bit more than Garrincha's World Cup, but most definitely the Prime is number 1. Definitely if you've got the money for the World Cup and you don't necessarily want to go and spend, I'd say, an extra 500k for the Prime, the World Cup's still very, very top end, but the Prime is number 1 and one of the best cams you can get to date. Pele as the penultimate card has been leaked or rumoured potentially getting a team and a year icon. 99 Pele would be absolutely fantastic, but 91 on the base, 95 for the mid, a big upgrade there, and then we get a 96 for obviously his World Cup and a 98 for his Prime. Obviously with Pele, doesn't have an increase for the World Cup, still a 5-star, 4-star, and the price difference is absolutely massive. We go from, what, 1.8 million for the base, 2.6, 3.4 and 4 million. It's an absolute pleasure to have this card in the game, and obviously with a Team of the Year icon, it would have to be a 99. There's no way that they downgrade now to a 97, so we could see one more final 99 rated Pele, which would be absolutely exquisite. But the Prime is number 1. And to finish off the best version of every icon, we had to finish on one of my favourites, the most expensive in the game by a landslide. It is R9. The base, always at the start, is absolutely brilliant. He's a cracking card, and as we go through, he doesn't necessarily lose relevancy, but in terms of what you want, the mid is the next step. He's 4.3 mil, which is more expensive than pretty much most Prime icons or icons in the game. We then have a World Cup at 6 million coins. Again, more expensive than any other icon. And then we get the 7.8 million Prime R9. This card is an absolute cheat code. He has pretty much 3 of the top most expensive cards in the game at this moment in time, all at once. All 3 of them are able to buy on the market. He is, in doubt, one of the best strikers we've ever had, and most definitely is the best version of R9. Let me know what you think, and make sure you like and subscribe. Peace.